Thank you, Ingrid. E-cigarettes, Uber, drones and Airbnb. Now, these are technological developments that are happening all the time. However, the problem with regulating these technologies is that the policymakers, can they keep up with our increasingly digital world? Now, this means regulators are often trying to adapt old regulations to new technologies. Julian Morris is the Vice President of Research at US think tank The Reason Foundation. He joins me now. Good morning, Julian. Okay, what sort of things, just give us an example of where we're going to get this gap, if you like, between policy and technology.
Well, there's sort of an inevitability of legislators and indeed regulators not catching up with new technology. I mean, it goes back all the way to the 19th century when the UK government put in place the Red Flag Act in 1865, which prevented cars from driving at more than 4 miles an hour in the countryside and 2 miles an hour in the city, and required a person to walk in front of a vehicle waving a red flag. That act wasn't rescinded until 1898, and during that period a lot of developments took place in automotive technology, but not so much in the UK. They took place mainly in Germany and other countries which didn't have such regulations. Those regulations were put in place largely at the behest of the providers of other locomotive services, so trains and horse and carriages. So you had this problem that the incumbent providers ended up dominating the discussion over legislation and regulation. And you see this now today with the regulation of ride-sharing services, Uber, Lyft and other companies that enable passengers to obtain a car using an app on their cell phone, and that car is dispatched by a kind of a robot through a program that enables the driver and the passenger to know who each other are, but that service is being opposed by companies that currently provide an alternative service, so a taxi service.
So they're protecting their patch, are they, Julian?
They're really trying to protect their patch. And you see the same with regard to electronic cigarettes. So e-cigarettes are a much, much safer way of providing consumers with nicotine. They have demonstrated an ability to enable people to switch from much more harmful smoking of cigarettes to much less harmful e-cigarette use in places like the UK, the US and France. But the providers of other nicotine delivery systems, and that's mainly the incumbent tobacco manufacturers in many countries, and pharma companies that provide nicotine replacement therapy, have lobbied heavily against the introduction of e-cigarettes in places like New Zealand.
So what should, say, a government like in New Zealand, it's the same anywhere around the world, I mean, they can see this thing happening, they can see these changes coming, these and disruptive technology. What should we be doing then to anticipate this, and so that policy matches technology?
I think the ideal would be to provide a framework that enables all sorts of technologies to be on the market as long as they don't do harm. So in the case of e-cigarettes, for example, create standards that enable all sorts of technologies to be on the market, whether they're any sort of non-combustible delivery system for nicotine. If there are standards that ensure high quality provision of nicotine and limited potential for harm from other aspects of technology, don't restrict the advertising of that technology. Because one of the problems here is that people don't know about new technologies. So if you apply kind of tobacco legislation to e-cigarettes, you're going to make it much more difficult for people to know about the benefits. So for example, the Maori population in this country has a very, very high smoking rate. About 35% of men and 40% of adult women Maoris smoke. It's very, very important for those people to understand that there's a much safer alternative which will enable them to switch much more effectively than existing nicotine replacement therapies and other ways that they might quit. So open, transparent system with standards that protect people from really adverse effects, and limited but targeted restrictions on advertising that don't prohibit advertising to target communities.
And don't be captured by the established vested interests.
Right, exactly.
Julian Morris, Vice President of Research at the Reason Foundation, appreciate you being with us this morning.